shop bell chimed as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced like secrets. I call her Betty. I let her be. She appeared at the door, as if the shop had been waiting for her. I've been selling wedding dresses for 5 years, immersed in dreams of satin, lace, and the precise hush of tulle. The storefront is a carved thing of age, and the building keeps secrets the way an old lover keeps grudges. She was too beautiful for the hour. She apologized, in a voice that held a small tremor, explaining she was eloping and needed something off the rack. She went for the vintage line like a moth to a lamp, and pulled out a Dior the staff always admired from afar. "Cost isn't a factor," she said, tracing the lace. She asked to try it on alone. I said yes, the way you say yes when you don't want to be rude. I had evening inventory to do. I hummed while I tallied and thought about a beach vacation. 15 minutes turned to 20. I walked to the curtain and called the usual, "Miss, need help?" The room gave me only muffled fabric answers. I moved the curtain aside. She stood in the center of the tiny room like an altar. The dress burned with a slow, impossible flame that ate the fabric and licked her skin but left no heat in the air. Her hair smoked at the edges, strands curling and catching as if a match had been struck an hour ago and refused to die. Her eyes were wide and unblinking, beautiful and terrible, and she whispered, "Help me." The voice you hear when you think you might die is odd. Your own is thin and foreign. I screamed, knocked back, and burned the tips of my hair by stepping too close. Reflex took over, extinguisher in hand, phone to ear, "Fire, please hurry," and I sprayed foam over her like some unbalanced prayer. When the sirens cut through the wet town and the fire crew shoved open our door, Betty was gone. The foam left a smell like cleaner and a white dust on the floor. The dressing room was clean. The Dior hung on its hook, untrimmed. Not a charred seam, no singe, no smoke in the vents. The fire chief smiled, the baffled smile of a man who sees a hysterical woman and a tidy shop. Maybe a candle, he offered. I wanted to tell him about the way her mouth had melted, the way her skin had sloughed like paint. Instead, I felt ridiculous and isolated. I reached up and touched the tips of my hair. They were not the neat curl of a stylist. They were scorched, the ends gone, fragile like burnt paper. The proof was on me, a small blistered ring around the otherwise unremarkable day. She came back the next night and the next. She arrived like someone keeping time with the bell every evening when the light leaned soft and the town exhaled. Each time she apologized for being late, for intruding. She always smiled like she'd lost and found something simultaneously, and she always said she'd be back tomorrow to try the dress for good. At first I accused her. I called the police once. Her eyes filled with tiny, perfect tears, and she backed away as if wounded by my suspicion. "I'll come tomorrow," she promised, wiping at a cheek with a tissue from a leather pocketbook. A kindness I didn't mean to give came loose in my chest, and I let her leave. After the 3rd week, I stopped calling the police. Customers began to notice the little anomalies. A chill that lived by the vintage rack, the smell of smoke when no fireplace burned, a faint tar in the hem of the Dior that shifted if you looked at it too long. I found that, when I humored her, letting her wander the mannequins, keep her gaze on the Dior, she softened, and the shop hummed back to normal. When I tried to bar the dressing rooms, she cried and fled. And sometimes we'd both end the night with me standing in the fluorescent light, feeling small for being afraid of a stranger's grief. I tried to learn her story. The dressing room held no papers, no name sewn into the lining. Once, beneath the shoulder pad of the Dior, I found a tiny, yellowed photograph. Two people in blurred motion, arms around one another, a train station visible behind them. The woman looked like Betty. The man was only a suggestion of a jaw and an arm. The back of the photo had a smudge of a date, but it could have been anything. I pressed it to my palm and felt like I'd held a ghost's pulse. Some nights she would stand by the window after she'd left, looking out at the empty street, as if watching for someone who never came. Sometimes the shop would smell of lavender and smoke together. Sometimes I woke with the metallic tang of fear in my teeth, a memory of a dress that burns but never burns. The town has its myths. An actor who hung himself in a room above the bakery. A bride who jumped from the clock tower during the war. But Betty fit none of them. She didn't ask for money. She never wanted to try the dress during open hours. She promised herself to tomorrow, always. The simple cruelty of her repetition hurt worse than any single night of flame. It was as if she were rehearsing a moment that refused to end. Chapter 5. I think about the possibility that someone loved her close enough to burn her. Jealousy, accident, a cruel joke gone wrong. Or maybe she danced too near a kerosene lamp, or a cigarette fell. I can imagine it 1,000 ways, and none feel right. The image that flatters me most is that she is waiting for the man in the photograph, that she is preparing for the walk down an aisle that never happened. I let myself tell that lie to sleep. So I let Betty come. I let her circle the vintage rack and stop before the Dior, smile, promise to be back. I keep the dressing rooms closed at closing time, and I pour her tea from a chipped mug when she asks. Sometimes I stand in the dim of the store after she goes and listen for the small sounds she leaves behind. The faint smell of lavender, the echo of a skirt brushing wood. I run my fingers along the hem of the Dior and imagine the flame where none is. Every so often I catch my reflection and notice those short blackened tips at the edge of my hair. A reminder that the world still contains things that singe, that ache, that do not belong to the living. I don't know if Betty will ever stop coming. I don't know if one night the fire waiting in that impossible dress will decide. My empathy is combustible. I only know she keeps appearing in the doorway like an invitation I can't refuse, and that sometimes when I close up, after the bell has stopped singing, I whisper, "Tomorrow," because hope and fear wear the same face. Betty circles the vintage rack and stops before the Dior, smile, promise to be back, leaving the shop owner waiting for tomorrow. The shop owner poured her tea from a chipped mug. Betty smiles, and they watch the street together. Every so often I catch my reflection and notice those short blackened tips at the edge of my hair, a reminder that the world still contains things that singe, that ache, that do not belong to the living.